If you're watching this now, it means you have already been exposed. I'm sorry. My intention was to warn people watching this by posting the first video, thinking I would succeed in getting them to stay away from Devil's Canyon. But I was wrong. The canyon no longer needs to be physically visited. It has found another way to spread. You already know my name, but I'll say it again. It's been 3 months since I published my first report on Joseph Yazzie, Devil's Canyon, interdimensional travel, and what happened to the 3 ASU hikers. And in those 3 months, everything has changed. I've changed, and so have you who watched that video. Before continuing, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button on the video. Sorry about that. It's hard to maintain a single state when you're existing across 7-dimensional frequencies. The camera can't quite decide which version of me to focus on. Your brain probably can't either. That's normal now. That's what I've become. A membrane walker, as the entities call it. Not fully human, not fully other, but something in between. It started the night after I posted the first video. September 28th, 2024, 3:33 a.m. I woke up to find 847 messages in my inbox, all sent at the exact same moment, all from different people across the world who had watched my Devil's Canyon report, all describing the exact same dream. In the dream, they were standing at the edge of the canyon, but the canyon existed in their bedroom, their office, wherever they had watched the video. The 3 transformed hikers, David, Rebecca, and Kyle, were there, but they weren't alone. Behind them stood hundreds of figures, all the people who had ever disappeared near Devil's Canyon, plus others. Ancient Anasazi, Spanish conquistadors from the 1540s, modern tourists, all existing in the same space, all speaking in unison. The door is open. The synthesis has begun. Find these coordinates: 33 degrees, 51 minutes, 14.2 seconds north, 111 degrees, 23 minutes, 45.8 seconds west. Those coordinates led to Montezuma Castle, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The morning after the dreams, I started getting calls from hospitals across Arizona. Phoenix, Tucson, Flagstaff, even small towns like Globe and Payson. They were seeing patients with identical symptoms. Pupils that reflected light in impossible spectrums. Body temperatures that fluctuated between 94 and 103 degrees in seconds. And most disturbing, the ability to be in 2 places at once. Dr. Rachel Martinez at Phoenix General was the first to make the connection. She'd watched my video. She recognized the symptoms. Officer Yazzie, she told me over a secure line, we have 47 patients exhibiting what we're calling dimensional synthesis syndrome. They all watched your Devil's Canyon report. They're all showing signs of existing in multiple realities simultaneously. And officer, it's spreading to people who haven't even seen the video. Just being near the affected seems to trigger the change. I drove to Phoenix immediately, or tried to. The thing about being a membrane walker is that driving becomes complicated when you're partially existing in realities where the road takes different routes. I left Window Rock at 9 a.m. I arrived in Phoenix at 8:45 a.m. I'd traveled backwards 15 minutes while driving for 3 hours. Time doesn't work right when you're between dimensions. The hospital was in chaos. Not panic exactly, but a kind of controlled confusion as medical staff tried to treat conditions that violated everything they knew about human biology. In the isolation ward, I met the first wave of the infected. Sarah Hendricks, 34, software engineer from Tempe. She'd watched my video on her lunch break. By dinner, she was seeing through walls, not metaphorically. She could literally perceive what was happening in rooms she wasn't in, because part of her existed in a dimension where those walls weren't there. It started as flashes, she told me. her eyes cycling through colors that shouldn't exist. I'd see my apartment, but also see it as it was in the 1960s, and as it will be in 2087 all at once. Now I can't turn it off. I can see you, Officer Yazzie, but I can also see the 3 other versions of you standing in the same space. Which one should I be talking to? All of them, I answered, and somehow that made perfect sense to both of us. Marcus Thompson, 19, college student from ASU. He'd shared my video with his entire dorm. Now 17 students were experiencing what he called probability bleeding. I reach for my coffee mug, he demonstrated, his hand becoming transparent as it moved, and I'm simultaneously picking it up, knocking it over, and never reaching for it at all. All 3 things happen. The universe can't decide which probability to collapse into reality, so they all remain true. He showed me his physics homework. The equations were solving themselves, showing not one answer but all possible answers existing in superposition. His professor, Dr. Alan Cray, had watched the video too. He was in the corner, frantically writing on a whiteboard that existed in 12 dimensions, proving theorems that wouldn't be discovered for another century in our original timeline. But the most disturbing case was Emily Chen, age 7. She hadn't watched the video. Her parents had. And somehow, the dimensional infection had passed to her, but differently. She wasn't struggling with the multiple realities. She was navigating them like a native. "Mr. Joseph," she said to me, and I knew she was seeing my true form, all 7 dimensional versions at once. "The shadow people want to talk to you. They say the canyon is growing. They say the synthesis can't be stopped now. They say you started something that was always meant to happen." She drew me a picture with crayons that changed color as you looked at them. It showed Devil's Canyon, but not as a single location. It was spreading like a virus through dimensional space, connecting to other thin places across Arizona. Lines of light connected it to Sedona, to the Superstition Mountains, to Meteor Crater, to Montezuma Castle. And at the center of the web, a figure that looked like me, but wasn't quite human anymore. "That's you in 3 weeks," Emily said matter-of-factly. "The shadow people showed me. You're going to become the anchor that holds all the dimensions together. Or the key that unlocks them all. They're not sure which yet." Patricia Begay, my former partner, arrived at the hospital that afternoon. She was different too. The probability streams she'd gained the ability to see had evolved. She could now actively choose which probability to manifest. "Watch this," she said, flipping a coin. "In this reality, it's heads." The coin landed heads. "Now it's tails." Without touching it, the coin flickered and showed tails. Now it's standing on its edge. The coin impossibly balanced. Now it never existed. The coin vanished. "Patricia, what's happening to us? Evolution, Joey, or infection? Maybe both." The email came this morning from the Federal Response Team. They want to quarantine everyone who's been affected. Build a facility in the desert. They're calling it Project Membrane. The same name the entities used. They knew this would happen. Or they made it happen. "Joey, I've been tracking the spread. It's not random. Everyone who's been affected has Native American ancestry, even if it's distant. The dimensional synthesis is targeting something in our DNA, something that makes us compatible with the alternate realities." She pulled out a tablet showing a map of Arizona. Red dots marked every case of dimensional synthesis syndrome. They formed a pattern, a spiral centered on Devil's Canyon, expanding outward in a perfect mathematical progression. The Fibonacci sequence, I recognized. It's spreading according to the golden ratio. Sacred geometry, the same patterns the Anasazi used in their architecture. "Joey, what if this isn't an invasion or an accident? What if this is a return? What if the Anasazi didn't disappear? They ascended to a higher dimension, and now they're coming back. Before I could answer, every screen in the hospital, TVs, computers, phones, flickered and displayed the same image. It was the three hikers from Devil's Canyon, but they looked more solid than they had in months, more human and less human simultaneously. Joseph Yazzie. They spoke in perfect unison, their voices coming from every speaker. The first phase is complete. 10,000 humans have been exposed to the truth frequency. The membrane between worlds is thinning according to schedule. In 72 hours, the second phase begins. Those who have been touched by the canyon must gather at the convergence point. The choice must be made: complete synthesis or eternal separation. The screens went dark, then displayed those same coordinates. 33 degrees, 51 minutes, 14.2 seconds north, 111 degrees, 23 minutes, 45.8 seconds west. Montezuma Castle. How many people have watched the video now? Patricia asked. I checked my phone, though the numbers seemed to shift between dimensions. 2.3 million views, if even a fraction of them are experiencing symptoms. Then we're looking at the largest dimensional breach in human history. And Joey, look at your hands. I looked down. My hands were flickering between solid and translucent, between human flesh and something that looked like crystallized light. I could feel myself existing in multiple states, sitting in the hospital, standing in Devil's Canyon, floating in the space between dimensions, all simultaneously. It's accelerating, I said, the transformation. I can feel the pull of the other realities getting stronger. That's when Special Agent Sarah Winters walked in. But she wasn't the same agent from 3 months ago. She was more like me now, a membrane walker existing in multiple states. Her government suit flickered between black, white, and colors that human eyes shouldn't be able to perceive. Officer Yazzie, Ms. Begay, she said, her voice harmonizing with itself across dimensions. The situation has evolved beyond our contingency plans. The president has been briefed. Multiple world leaders are reporting similar phenomena in their countries. Every sacred site on Earth is showing signs of dimensional instability. The pyramids, Stonehenge, Angkor Wat, they're all beginning to resonate at the same frequency as Devil's Canyon. This is global, Patricia gasped. As of 6 hours ago, yes. But it started here with your video, Officer Yazzie. You didn't just document a local anomaly. You provided the activation key. Everyone who watched your video and experienced the dream became a transmission vector. Their consciousness carries the frequency now, spreading it to everyone they interact with. I was trying to warn people, and in doing so, you initiated the very thing the entities have been trying to achieve for 79 years. The global awakening to multidimensional reality. The question now is, do we fight it, contain it, or embrace it? She handed me a classified folder, though I could see through it to read the contents without opening it. Another perk of dimensional vision. Inside were satellite images of Devil's Canyon from the past 3 months. The canyon wasn't just active, it was growing. Not physically expanding, but dimensionally. It now existed in 12 realities simultaneously, and in each one, it was a different size, a different shape. The Navajo Nation has closed all roads leading to the canyon, Winters continued. But it doesn't matter. People are being drawn there in their dreams, their consciousness traveling even when their bodies stay put. We've recorded over 3,000 cases of people who've never been to Arizona suddenly speaking fluent Navajo, describing the canyon in perfect detail. The collective unconscious, Patricia breathed. Young was right. We're all connected at a fundamental level, and Devil's Canyon has become a shared experience, a mutual dream. My phone buzzed. Another message, but this one was different. It was from my grandmother Lucy, who had died in 2010, but also existed in a timeline where she lived to see 2024. Grandson, her message read, though the text kept shifting between Navajo and English, between past and present tense. The ceremony must be completed. The ghost dance your ancestors started, the dimensional breach the government created, the synthesis the entities seek, they're all the same event, viewed from different angles. Come to the old Hogan. Bring the infected. It's time you learned what really happened in 1945 and what's really going to happen in 2025. I looked at Patricia and Agent Winters. We need to go to the reservation. My grandmother, your grandmother who's dead but also alive, existing in quantum superposition like everything else touched by the canyon, Winters finished. Yes, Officer Yazzie. We know. We've been monitoring all the paradox manifestations. The dead who aren't dead, the living who aren't alive, the events that happened and didn't happen. Reality is becoming negotiable, and someone needs to decide which version becomes true. Outside the hospital, Phoenix was changing. I could see it through my enhanced perception. Buildings that existed in 2024 overlapping with structures from the 1880s and architectural dreams of 2150. The city was becoming unstable, flickering between what it was, what it is, and what it could be, and in the distance toward the north I could see Devil's Canyon. Not with my physical eyes, it was too far away for that. But with my dimensional sight I could perceive it pulsing like a heart, sending out waves of transformative energy with each beat. Each pulse brought more people into awareness, more minds into the synthesis. 2.3 million views, I muttered. If even 1% are experiencing full symptoms. 23,000 membrane walkers, Patricia calculated. Enough to form a critical mass, enough to complete the transformation of human consciousness. Agent Winters finished. The question is, transformation into what? The drive to the old Hogan should have taken 4 hours. It took us 17 minutes and 3 days simultaneously. Time doesn't follow rules when you're traveling with 3 membrane walkers in a government vehicle equipped with temporal stabilizers that don't actually stabilize anything. Patricia navigated using probability streams she could see but not fully explain. Agent Winters drove through dimensions I didn't know existed. And I sat in the back, watching the landscape flicker between desert, ocean, forest, and void. All the things Arizona had been, could be, or might never become. Pull over, I said suddenly, feeling a pull I couldn't ignore. Here! Now. We were nowhere special, a stretch of desert highway between Flagstaff and the reservation. But as soon as we stopped, I knew why I'd been called to this spot. The ground beneath us was ancient, older than it should be. And below that, there's something buried here, Patricia said, her probability sight showing her the same thing I was sensing. Something that's been waiting. Agent Winters was already pulling equipment from the trunk, devices that looked like they'd been designed by someone who'd seen the future and tried to build it with present-day materials. She swept a scanner over the ground, and the readings made her face go pale. This is impossible. The isotope signatures date to 1054 AD, but also 1945, and also next week? The Crab Nebula supernova, I said, the knowledge coming from somewhere I couldn't identify. 1054. The Anasazi saw it, recorded it, but they didn't just observe it, they used it. I knelt and placed my hands on the earth. Immediately, visions flooded through me. Not memories, but direct transfers of experience across time. I saw them. The Anasazi, but not as archaeologists imagined them. They were membrane walkers like us. They'd discovered the dimensional boundaries centuries before European contact, learned to navigate between worlds as easily as walking from room to room. Pueblo Bonito wasn't a dwelling, I heard myself saying, though the voice seemed to come from multiple versions of me across time. It was a dimensional anchor. Chaco Canyon, Mesa Verde, Canyon de Chelly. They were all part of a network designed to monitor and maintain the barriers between realities. Patricia was on her knees beside me, experiencing the same visions. They knew. They knew that eventually someone would try to break through from the other side. So they built a defense system. But something went wrong. The year 1054, Agent Winters read from her scanner, which was now displaying text in languages that shifted between ancestral Puebloan, Spanish, English, and something that hadn't been invented yet. The supernova. It wasn't just a celestial event, it was a dimensional collision. Two universes brushed against each other, and the Anasazi were caught in the middle. The visions intensified. I saw the moment of contact, a night when the sky cracked open and something vast looked through. The Anasazi shamans, recognizing the threat, made a desperate choice. They didn't disappear or migrate, as historians believed. They evacuated, not to another location, but to another dimension. They became the first human civilization to consciously choose transformation over extinction. But they left guardians, I said, understanding flooding through me. Genetic markers in their descendants. Dormant until needed. Until now. That's when the ground beneath us began to crack. Not violently, but deliberately, like a seed opening. From the fissure rose something that shouldn't exist. A crystalline structure that looked both ancient and impossibly advanced. It was covered in petroglyphs that moved, telling stories that changed depending on which dimension you were viewing from. Inside the crystal was a figure, human in shape but made of condensed light. As we watched, it solidified, taking form, becoming impossible, Patricia breathed. It was her, or rather, it was Patricia Begay, from 1054 AD. Same face, same spirit, different incarnation. The Anasazi Patricia opened eyes that held the weight of 1,000 years and smiled. "Finally," she said, in perfect modern English, though her lips moved in ancient Puebloan. "The circle completes. The descendants return. The synthesis can begin properly." She stepped out of the crystal, and where her feet touched the ground, petroglyphs appeared. Not carved, but growing like living things. She looked at modern Patricia with recognition and sadness. "I am your ancestor and your future simultaneously. I volunteered to stay behind, to sleep in the crystal until the worlds began to merge again. We knew this day would come. We prepared for it. But we didn't expect it would take so long, or cost so much." "The disappearances," I said, "all the people who vanished over the centuries, were being prepared, transformed, made ready for the merger. Your government's test in 1945 wasn't the beginning, it was a response. They detected our dimensional pocket and tried to break in, thinking it was empty space they could exploit. They tore the hole wider, but we've been working ever since to control the flow." Agent Winters stepped forward, her government authority meaningless in the face of this ancient knowledge. "You're saying the Anasazi have been managing the dimensional breach for 1,000 years. Not managing. Guiding. Evolution doesn't happen randomly, Agent Winters. It's cultivated, nurtured. We've been preparing humanity for multidimensional existence one bloodline at a time. The native peoples were first because we already understood that reality is fluid, that the spirit world and physical world are merely different faces of the same truth." Ancient Patricia turned to me. "Joseph Yazzie, You carry the strongest concentration of the genetic markers. Your grandmother knew this. That's why she prepared you with the stories, the ceremonies. You weren't chosen to be a membrane walker. You were bred for it, across centuries. My grandmother, she's waiting at the Hogan. She's waiting in all times simultaneously. The Hogan exists in 1880, 1945, 2024, and 2087 all at once now. It's become a temporal nexus, like Devil's Canyon, but older, more stable. She's there with the others, the council that has guided this process since before Columbus thought the world was round. We got back in the vehicle, but now we had a fourth passenger, ancient Patricia, who existed in the car and outside it, in our time and her own, solid and ethereal. The drive to the Hogan took no time and forever. The landscape wasn't just flickering now, it was layered, showing the complete history of the land in transparent strata. When we arrived, the Hogan was impossible. It was the simple, traditional structure I remembered from childhood, but also a massive crystalline dome, a futuristic complex, and a natural cave formation. All versions were equally true. My grandmother Lucy stood at the entrance. All of her, the young woman from the 1950s, the elder who raised me, the version who died in 2010, and one who looked to be from some time in the future, wearing clothes that seemed to be made of woven light. "Grandson," they said in unison, their voices creating a harmony that made reality resonate. "Welcome to the truth. Welcome to what the Anasazi always knew, that time is a spiral, not a line, and every point touches every other point if you know how to fold the circle correctly." Inside the Hogan, 12 figures sat in council. Some I recognized from historical photos. Navajo, Hopi, Zuni, Apache leaders who had supposedly died decades or centuries ago. Others were strangers, but I could feel their connection to the land, to the dimensions, to the great work of preparing humanity for this moment. In the center was something that made my transformed perception real. It was a map, but not of geography. It was a map of time itself, showing every dimensional breach, every thin spot, every place where reality could be negotiated. Devil's Canyon pulsed red at one node, but there were dozens of others. Sedona's vortexes, the Superstition Mountains, Meteor Crater, all connected by lines of light that existed in dimensions we didn't have names for. "The Spaniards came searching for gold," one elder said. I recognized him as Esteban, the African guide who had disappeared in 1539 while seeking Cibola. But the 7 cities of gold weren't places. They were dimensional states, realities where different laws of physics allowed for transmutation of matter. We showed them the shadow of truth, and they died trying to grasp it with 3-dimensional hands. "The Phoenix Lights in 1997, another figure added. This one, in a modern military uniform but with insignia that wouldn't exist until 2030. Wasn't aliens. It was us, the transformed Anasazi, testing how modern humans would react to multidimensional craft. The fear response told us humanity wasn't ready. But your video, Joseph, it changed the equation. Instead of fear, it sparked curiosity. Instead of denial, it triggered awakening." My grandmother gestured to the map. "Every point is now active. The membrane between worlds isn't just thin, it's permeable. But it's not random. It's following the pattern we encoded in the petroglyphs, in the pottery, in the very genetics of the people. The question now is, do we guide it to completion, or do we seal it?" "Seal it?" Patricia, modern Patricia, asked. "Can we even do that?" "With sacrifice," ancient Patricia answered. "The same way we sealed it in 1054. Volunteers would need to become permanent bridges, existing forever between worlds, neither here nor there, maintaining the boundary for eternity. Last time, 10,000 Anasazi volunteered. They're still there, in the spaces between spaces, holding the line. But this time is different, Agent Winters said, studying readings on her equipment. The breach is global. It would take millions of volunteers. Or, my grandmother said, all her versions speaking in harmony. We could complete what was started. Allow the full merger. Let humanity evolve into its multidimensional nature. But the cost? Show me, I said. They did. The visions that flooded through me weren't gentle. I saw Earth, not our Earth, but all possible Earths, trying to exist in the same space. Most collided catastrophically, canceling each other out. In the successful mergers, humanity survived but changed beyond recognition. We became something between matter and energy, between thought and substance. We gained the ability to traverse realities at will, but lost the simplicity of singular existence. I saw children born with memories of lives they hadn't lived yet. Adults aging backwards through time. Cities that existed in 7 dimensions, where architecture followed laws of physics that hurt to contemplate. It was beautiful and terrible, evolution and extinction combined. But there's a third option, I said, the knowledge coming from the part of me that existed in futures that might be. We don't seal it or complete it. We regulate it, create a controlled synthesis. Some humans evolve, others remain baseline, all coexisting. The reservation system, one elder laughed bitterly, but for dimensions instead of land. No, I insisted. More like a choice. Each person decides their level of dimensional integration. Some become full membrane walkers. Others remain in singular reality. Most exist somewhere between. Ancient Patricia studied me with eyes that held centuries of wisdom. You would need anchors, beings capable of existing at all levels simultaneously, guiding others through their chosen transformations. I volunteer, I said immediately. As do I, modern Patricia added. The government will never allow it, Agent Winters said. Then, after a pause, which is why I'll have to manage it from inside. I volunteer as well. My grandmother smiled. All of her smiled. The Trinity is formed. The guide, the protector, and the manager. But you'll need more. Thousands more, to serve as bridges at every breach point. The 847 who had the dream, I realized. They weren't randomly selected. They're all descendants of the various guardian bloodlines. Anasazi, Hohokam, Mogollon, and the others who knew the truth. And the millions who watched your video, the elder added. They've been activated. Not all will transform, but all now carry the potential. The knowledge is spreading through humanity's collective unconscious like a virus, or like evolution itself. Outside the Hogan, the sky was doing something impossible. It was showing stars from different eras simultaneous, constellations from the past, present, and future all visible at once. The Crab Nebula, which should barely be visible, blazed like a second sun, pulsing in rhythm with Devil's Canyon and every other breach point. Montezuma Castle, I said suddenly. The coordinates from the dream. That's where it happens, isn't it? The choice point. In 24 hours, my grandmother confirmed. When the moon is dark and the veil is thinnest, all who have been touched by the truth will be drawn there. And together you will decide humanity's future, or futures, since singular outcomes are no longer possible. Agent Winters was on her phone, speaking in rapid code to someone. Understood. Yes, sir. The Anasazi protocol is confirmed. We're moving to stage 3. She hung up and looked at us. The President knows. The Joint Chiefs know. They're mobilizing, but not to stop it. To manage the chaos when 1 million people suddenly converge on Montezuma Castle. They're calling it the largest evolutionary event in human history. Because it is, ancient Patricia said. The last time something this significant happened, Homo sapiens emerged from earlier hominids. This time, Homo multidimensionalis emerges from sapiens. Or doesn't, depending on the choice made tomorrow. I stood, feeling the weight of what was coming. I was Joseph Yazzie, tribal police officer. I was also something else. A bridge between worlds, a translator of impossibilities, a guide for humanity's next chapter or its last. Then we'd better prepare, I said. How do you get 1 million membrane walkers to agree on anything? You don't, my grandmother said. You let them experience all possibilities simultaneously and trust that consciousness, when faced with infinite options, will choose the path of greatest harmony. The Anasazi learned this truth. Given the choice between destruction and transformation, life always chooses to become more than it was. Unless fear wins, Agent Winters added darkly. The linearists are mobilizing too. They see this as an invasion, a corruption of human purity. They're planning to detonate an electromagnetic pulse at Montezuma Castle, thinking it will seal the breaches. It won't seal them, ancient Patricia said. It will shatter them. Every breach will explode simultaneously, tearing reality apart at the quantum level. Earth won't just die. It will never have existed. The stakes were clear. Tomorrow, at Montezuma Castle, humanity would either evolve, remain the same, or cease to be. And somehow, a Navajo cop who could barely handle existing in 7 dimensions was supposed to help guide that choice. The night before the convergence, Arizona became impossible. Phoenix residents woke to find their city existing in 3 time periods simultaneously. The downtown skyline flickered between 1881's wooden buildings, 2024's glass towers, and 2094's organic structures that looked grown rather than built. Traffic became chaos as cars phased through horses and hover vehicles that wouldn't exist for 70 years. In Sedona, the famous vortexes weren't just energy sites anymore. They were literal portals. Tourists who came for spiritual experiences found themselves having conversations with their past and future selves. The red rocks bled light in spectrums human eyes had never seen before. Cathedral Rock existed as a church, a spaceship, and a living entity all at once. The Superstition Mountains revealed their true nature. The Lost Dutchman's gold mine was never about gold. It was a dimensional vault where the Apache had stored dangerous knowledge, things that shouldn't exist in any single reality. Now it was opening, spilling impossible treasures and terrible truths into our world. But the center of it all, the point where every dimensional line converged, was Montezuma Castle. I stood at the site at 3 a.m., watching the ancient cliff dwelling pulse with light that came from no source. Patricia was beside me, her probability sight showing her millions of potential outcomes for the next 24 hours. Agent Winters coordinated with federal forces trying to maintain a perimeter around something that didn't follow 3-dimensional boundaries. "They're coming," Patricia said, her eyes reflecting futures I couldn't see. All of them. Every person touched by the canyon's influence. But Joey, the linearists are coming too, and they're bringing something. The EMP. Worse, they've made contact with the temporal authority from the Wounded Knee incident. The ones who want to preserve traumatic events. They're going to try to lock the breach in a state of perpetual chaos, feeding off the transformation energy forever. Before I could respond, the cliff dwelling did something unprecedented. It spoke, not in words, but in direct consciousness transmission. Every membrane walker within 100 miles heard it simultaneously. The pattern is incomplete. The triangle must be closed. Devil's Canyon to Sedona, to Superstition to Castle. The ancient agreement must be honored or broken. Choose. Ancient Patricia materialized beside us. She'd been traveling between breach sites, preparing them for tomorrow. It's starting early. The sites are connecting themselves, forming the pattern the Anasazi encoded, but someone's interfering with the sequence. She pointed to the sky, where something that shouldn't exist was becoming visible. It looked like a city, but inverted, hanging upside down from the night sky. Buildings grew downward like stalactites, and in them I could see people, thousands of them, all the missing persons from the past 79 years, existing in a parallel phoenix that occupied the same space as ours. The synthesists, Agent Winters breathed. They're not waiting for tomorrow. They're forcing the merger now. That's when the first wave hit. It wasn't physical, it was conceptual. Reality hiccuped, and suddenly everyone within 50 miles of Montezuma Castle could perceive all dimensions simultaneously. The screaming started immediately. Human minds weren't meant to process infinite realities without preparation. But some of us were ready. The 847 dreamers, the membrane walkers, the descendants of guardian bloodlines. We became anchors, helping others adjust to the new perception. I found myself splitting into multiple versions, each one guiding a different group through the transformation. In Phoenix, emergency services collapsed as first responders began existing in multiple time periods. A fire chief from 1912 tried to coordinate with EMTs from 2024, while future police from 2087 attempted to maintain order with technology that our present couldn't understand. The Phoenix Lights returned, but this time we knew what they were. The transformed Anasazi, in their multidimensional craft, forming a protective barrier around the city. They spoke through harmonized frequencies that bypassed the ears and went straight to consciousness. The choice approaches. Those who would preserve, those who would transform, those who would destroy, all converge. The pattern must be completed or shattered. No middle path remains. In Sedona, the vortexes began to merge. The Airport Mesa, Cathedral Rock, Bell Rock, and Boynton Canyon vortexes connected through dimensional streams, visible as rivers of light flowing through the air. Where they intersected, reality became malleable. Artists found they could paint things into existence. Musicians discovered their songs could rewrite the laws of physics locally. Writers watched their words become literal reality. But it was in the Superstition Mountains where things went truly wrong. The linearists had established their base there, using the dimensional vault's energy to power their weapons. They'd recruited thousands. People terrified of change, clinging to singular reality like a life raft in an ocean of possibility. Their leader, a man calling himself Commander Sterling, though I recognized him as Richard Sterling, the billionaire from the other timeline, stood before a device that hurt to perceive. It's a reality anchor, Agent Winters explained, her equipment screaming warnings. They're going to try to freeze Arizona in a single timeline, cutting it off from the dimensional network. But the energy required, it'll create a dead zone. Nothing will be able to exist there, not in any dimension. Genocide across infinite realities, Patricia whispered. We had to stop them, but we were 50 miles away and existing in 7 dimensions made physical travel complicated. That's when my grandmother appeared, not in person, but as a projection of pure consciousness. The Hogan, she said. It connects to all sacred sites. Use the ancient pathways, of course. The Anasazi hadn't just built roads. They'd built dimensional highways, ways to travel between sacred sites instantly. But using them required a sacrifice. Each journey would lock part of you into the pathway, becoming part of the transportation network itself. "I'll go," I said. "We'll go," Patricia corrected. "All three of us. The Trinity, remember?" Agent Winters nodded. "My government contact says the president is watching through my feed. Whatever happens next, the world will witness it. We entered the Hogan, which now existed as a nexus of all Hogans that had ever been or would be." In the center, the map of dimensional breaches had become three-dimensional, showing not just locations, but temporal positions. The Superstition Mountains pulsed with sick light. "Hold hands," Ancient Patricia instructed. "Think of the destination. Accept the price." We did. The journey wasn't travel. It was translation. We became information, transmitted along ley lines that existed in dimensions where distance was meaningless. I felt parts of myself being left behind, encoded into the pathway itself. Memories, experiences, pieces of my identity became part of the ancient network. We materialized in the heart of the Superstition Mountains just as Commander Sterling was about to activate his device. Around him, 3,000 linearists stood in formation, their minds shielded by technology that blocked multidimensional perception. "Joseph Yazzie," Sterling said without turning. "The infected cop who started this plague. You're too late. In 30 seconds, Arizona returns to sanity. One timeline, one reality, one truth. You'll kill millions," Patricia said. "Every person existing in multiple states will be torn apart. Acceptable losses. Humanity must remain pure, singular, comprehensible. Your transformation is an abomination." That's when I noticed something Sterling hadn't. The dimensional vault was open behind him, and from it, Apache warriors from across time were emerging. Not just Apache, Yavapai, Pima, Tohono O'odham, all the tribes who had called Arizona home. They existed in every era simultaneously, and they were angry. "You use our sacred mountain for destruction," their unified voice echoed. "You poison the land with your fear. This ends." The battle wasn't physical. It couldn't be when some combatants existed in times before weapons were invented and others wielded technology from centuries in the future. It was a war of consciousness, each side trying to impose their version of reality on the space. I found myself fighting 17 versions of Sterling simultaneously, each from a different timeline where he'd made slightly different choices. Patricia manipulated probability streams, making his device malfunction in 1,000 tiny ways. Agent Winters called in support from government agents across time, FBI, CIA, organizations that wouldn't exist for decades. But it was the Apache who turned the tide. They didn't fight Sterling. Instead, they showed him truth. They pulled him into their perception, made him experience every timeline simultaneously. Ones where Europeans never colonized America. Ones where technology developed differently. Ones where humanity had already evolved beyond physical form. Sterling screamed, his singular worldview shattering under the weight of infinite possibility. His anchor device, feeding on his consciousness, reversed its function. Instead of freezing reality, it exploded it outward, accelerating the dimensional merger. The Superstition Mountains transformed. The ancient vault opened fully, revealing not gold or treasure, but preserved moments of human potential. Every invention never made, every peace treaty never signed, every moment of kindness that almost happened. They flooded into our reality like antibodies into an infection, healing wounds we didn't know existed. But the explosion had consequences. The dimensional breaches weren't just connecting anymore. They were synchronizing. Every thin spot on Earth pulsed in rhythm, building to something. "The cascade," Ancient Patricia said, her form flickering as she existed in too many places at once. Its beginning. Every sacred site, every place of power, every location where reality was ever negotiated, they're all activating. Through my enhanced perception, I could see it. The Great Pyramid sending beams of light to Stonehenge. Machu Picchu resonating with Mount Fuji. The Ganges connecting to the Amazon through rivers of consciousness that flowed outside normal space. And at the center of it all, Montezuma Castle began to rise. Not physically, dimensionally. It existed at every elevation simultaneously, from underground to atmospheric, a vertical bridge between Earth and something else. 20 hours until the convergence, Agent Winters said, checking readings that required mathematics from timelines where humanity had evolved different cognitive structures. Whatever happens at the castle tomorrow won't just affect Arizona or America. It's going to redefine what it means to be human on a planetary scale. The linearists were scattered, their movement broken. Sterling sat in catatonic shock, his mind unable to return to singular perception. But there were other threats gathering. Through the dimensional static, I could sense them. Entities that fed on chaos. Beings that existed in the spaces between realities. Things that had been waiting for the barriers to weaken. We need to gather the membrane walkers, I said. All of them. Tomorrow isn't just about choosing evolution or stagnation. It's about survival. If we don't guide this transformation properly, Earth could become a feeding ground for interdimensional predators. Patricia's eyes went wide as she scanned probability streams. Joey, I see it. Tomorrow, at the moment of convergence, there's a 93% chance that... She never finished the sentence. Reality blinked, and suddenly it was tomorrow. Time had skipped, or we had, or the distinction no longer mattered. Montezuma Castle stood before us, and around it, 1 million membrane walkers were gathering. But they weren't all human anymore. Some had evolved beyond physical form. Others had devolved into pure instinct. Most existed somewhere between, struggling to maintain identity while experiencing infinite possibility. Above us, the sky cracked like an eggshell, revealing the void between dimensions. And from that void, something vast and hungry looked down at Earth, seeing a planet in transformation, vulnerable, ready to be consumed or transformed or both. The convergence hadn't arrived. It had been here all along, waiting for us to notice. And now, with less than an hour until the moment of choice, I realized the terrifying truth. We weren't deciding humanity's future. We were deciding whether humanity would have a future at all. This is my final transmission. By the time you watch this, I will no longer exist in any form you would recognize as Joseph Yazzie. I am becoming something else. Something necessary. The convergence at Montezuma Castle didn't happen the way any of us expected. As the 1 million membrane walkers gathered, reality itself began to break down. Not gradually, but in waves, each one rewriting the fundamental laws of existence. At 11:11 a.m. on October 1st, 2024, the castle began to sing. Not sound, but pure frequency, harmonizing across all dimensions simultaneously. Every person present, from barely touched viewers of my original video to fully transformed dimensional beings, heard their own personal truth in that song. For some, it was terror. For others, transcendence. Patricia stood beside me, her probability sight showing her not millions but infinite outcomes, all equally likely, all happening simultaneously. "Joey," she said, her voice fragmenting across timelines, "we're not choosing one future. Every possible future is becoming real. The multiverse isn't branching, it's blooming." Agent Winters was in communication with governments across timelines. The president in our timeline wants to contain it. The president in timeline B7 wants to weaponize it. The presidents in timelines C through Z don't exist because America never formed. They're all trying to give me orders, and I exist in all their realities at once. But it was ancient Patricia who understood first. The Anasazi didn't disappear to escape. They disappeared to become the infrastructure. They transformed into the dimensional framework itself, becoming the bridges, the roads, the very fabric that holds realities together. That's when the entities revealed themselves fully. Not the synthesists from Devil's Canyon, they were just refugees, survivors like us. The real architects of the dimensional structure were something else entirely. They had no form because they were form itself. No consciousness because they were consciousness itself. They spoke through the castle, through every grain of sand, through the quantum foam between atoms. Every 13 billion years, reality resets. Each universe that survives becomes a seed for the next iteration. Earth has been chosen as a seed point. Humanity must now decide, germinate, or decay. The choice wasn't what we thought. It wasn't about accepting or rejecting transformation. It was about whether humanity would become the foundation for the next universal cycle or be recycled into cosmic background radiation. That's when I understood my true purpose. Why I existed in superposition. Why my grandmother had prepared me with stories that were actually survival instructions encoded in metaphor. Why Devil's Canyon had chosen me as its messenger. I volunteer, I said, knowing what it meant. I'll become the anchor. Not alone, Patricia said immediately. Never alone, Agent Winters added. One by one, the 847 original dreamers stepped forward. Then hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands. Not everyone. Many chose to remain human, to experience the transformation from within normal consciousness. But enough volunteered. Enough to create what was needed. We joined hands, though many of us no longer had hands in any conventional sense. We formed a circle around Montezuma Castle, though the circle existed in 17 dimensions and included people from timelines that mutually excluded each other. The transformation began. I felt myself dissolving, not dying, but spreading. My consciousness became a thread in a vast web, connecting every reality where I had ever existed or might exist. I was Joseph Yazzie, the tribal cop. Joseph Yazzie, the physics professor. Joseph Yazzie, who died at birth. Joseph Yazzie, who lived for 300 years. All of them, none of them, something new made from their intersection. Patricia's probability site became reality itself. She didn't see possible futures. She became the mechanism by which possibility collapsed into actuality. Every choice, every quantum event, every moment of uncertainty resolved through her expanded consciousness. Agent Winters became the interface, the translator between human understanding and cosmic truth. Through her, governments could comprehend what was happening. Through her, the transformation could be documented in terms that three-dimensional minds could process. The million membrane walkers at Montezuma Castle weren't just witnesses, they were participants. Each one became a node in the new structure, a point where realities could meet and exchange information without destroying each other. But something went wrong. Or right, depending on your perspective. The linearist's reality anchor, the one we thought we'd destroyed, had created an unexpected effect. It had preserved a bubble of original reality, untouched by the transformation. Inside that bubble, Earth continued as it had been, singular, solid, comprehensible. Outside the bubble, Earth became everything it could be. 2 Earths now existed in the same space, one transformed, one preserved. And connecting them, bridging the gap, were those of us who had volunteered to become infrastructure. I exist now as the border between worlds. When someone in baseline reality dreams of impossible things, they're touching my consciousness. When someone in the transformed reality needs grounding, needs to remember what singular existence felt like, they pass through me. The Devil's Canyon portal is no longer a wound or a doorway. It's a conscious choice. Anyone can access it, but only by accepting that the journey changes you. My original video, the one that started this all, has become something like a key. Watching it doesn't force transformation, but it makes transformation possible for those who choose it. The Navajo Nation has become the embassy between realities. The reservation exists in both worlds simultaneously, a place where baseline humans and transformed beings can meet safely. My grandmother, who now exists as a pattern of wisdom distributed across dimensions, serves as an eternal translator. The Apache got their sacred mountains back. In the transformed reality, the Superstition Mountains were never colonized, never mined, never disturbed. The linearists' attempt to destroy change instead created a perfect preserve of unchanged reality. The Anasazi returned, not as individuals but as living cities. Pueblo Bonito exists now as a conscious entity, a place that thinks and dreams and remembers. Mesa Verde teaches those who would learn, downloading 1,000-year-old wisdom directly into consciousness. The 3 ASU hikers, David, Rebecca, and Kyle, have become something like patron saints of transformation. They exist at every breach point simultaneously, helping new membrane walkers adjust to multidimensional existence. They're still graduate students in a sense, but their field of study is reality itself. Phoenix has adapted remarkably well. The city government simply created a Department of Dimensional Affairs. They issue permits for timeline alterations, regulate probability manipulation, and maintain the barriers between the preserved and transformed zones. The Phoenix lights are now a nightly occurrence, treated like a particularly pretty sunset. Sedona's vortexes have become tourist attractions in both realities. In the baseline world, they're still energy sites for spiritual seekers. In the transformed world, they're literal portals where you can vacation in alternate timelines. The hotel industry has adapted by offering rooms that exist in multiple centuries simultaneously. But here's the thing you need to understand if you're watching this. None of this is fixed. Reality is no longer a noun. It's a verb. It's something we're all doing together, creating moment by moment through our collective choices. Some days, the percentage of transformed humans increases. Other days, people choose to return to baseline reality, tired of infinite possibility. The boundary I've become expands and contracts like breathing. The government still exists, in hundreds of versions across multiple timelines. Agent Winters coordinates them all, preventing the kind of paradoxes that could unravel existence. She tells me the president, all the presidents, have accepted the situation. What choice do they have? You can't govern reality when reality itself is optional. The year 2025 approaches in some timelines, has already passed in others, will never arrive in a few. The Ghost Dance prophecy from Wounded Knee is fulfilling itself in ways the prophet Wovoka never imagined. The dead are returning, but not to our reality. We're going to theirs, meeting them halfway in dimensions where death is just another state of being. Children born after the convergence are different. They don't see transformation as strange or frightening. To them, it's normal that their teacher exists in 7 timelines, that their playground extends into parallel dimensions, that their imaginary friends are actually alternate versions of themselves. My nephew, Patricia's son, asked me yesterday, though yesterday is a flexible concept now, "Uncle Joey, why do some people choose to stay singular?" I told him the truth, because singular is beautiful too. A melody doesn't need harmony to be music. A color doesn't need a spectrum to be vibrant. Some people are complete in one dimension, and that's perfect. The entities that triggered all this, the synthesists, the beings from beyond the void, they're still here, but they're no longer other. They're part of Earth's expanded definition now, as native as anything else that exists here. They teach us about realities we haven't imagined yet, show us possibilities we lack the mathematics to describe. Devil's Canyon still bleeds, but now it bleeds light instead of darkness. Every drop is a possibility, a potential future, a choice unmade. People still come to witness it, to touch the membrane between worlds. Some pass through, some turn back. All are changed by the encounter. If you've made it this far in my transmission, if you haven't dismissed it as fiction or madness, then you're probably feeling it. The pull, the call, the invitation. That's normal. Watching this video creates a resonance, a sympathetic vibration with the transformed reality. You're not infected or corrupted. You're simply aware that there's more. You don't have to transform. You don't have to become a membrane walker. You can close this video, go about your singular life, and be perfectly happy. The baseline reality is protected, preserved, cherished. It's the foundation that makes transformation meaningful. But if you choose to explore, if you decide to see what lies beyond singular existence, know this: you won't be alone. Millions have made the journey. We exist now as guides, bridges, translators. We remember what it was like to be singular, and we can help you navigate the infinite. The coordinates haven't changed. Devil's Canyon still pulses at the same location. Montezuma Castle still stands as a doorway. The sacred sites still resonate at frequencies that can open your perception. But now you don't need to physically visit them. The transformation can happen anywhere, anytime, for anyone who genuinely chooses it. This is Joseph Yazzie, signing off from everywhere and nowhere, from all times and no time. I am the membrane between worlds, the story that tells itself, the choice that makes itself available. If you see me in your dreams, don't be afraid. I'm just checking in, making sure the boundary holds, ensuring that both realities, transformed and preserved, continue to coexist. It's my job now, my purpose, my joy. Welcome to the new world. Or stay in the old one. Both are perfect. Both are necessary. Both are real. The canyon is calling, but only if you choose to hear it. End transmission. Begin transformation. Or don't. The choice, as always, is yours.